Imagine, right? Like, you're getting dressed in, say, 1901. You're a man.
Okay.
Pretty much guaranteed you're putting on a suit.
A suit. Yeah.
Like a really, really proper one.
Oh, yeah.
3 pieces.
Yeah.
Tailored to within an inch of its life. Stiff collar.
Oh, yeah.
Probably can't even turn your head properly.
Yeah.
And shoes.
Yeah.
Polished to a mirror shop.
You have the shiny shoes.
Now, fast forward, same guy. 100 years later.
Right.
Jeans and sneakers.
Completely different.
That's the kind of change we're talking about.
I mean, that shows you how much clothing is about so much more than, just not being naked.
Totally. It's a reflection of, like, everything, right?
Yeah, like a whole century of, everything, society.
Culture, tech, the whole shebang.
Exactly. All of that.
So that's what we're diving into today.
Okay, sounds good.
Menswear.
A classic.
We're going deep on it. 100 Years of Menswear.
Oh, Cally Blackman.
That's the one.
Great book.
We want to get into the nitty-gritty.
The real detail.
Not just what guys wore, but why.
The why is crucial.
If you think about it, menswear, it's like a mirror almost.
Reflecting all those changes you mentioned, right?
Exactly. Reflecting, maybe even predicting those shifts.
It's like a silent historical record.
Blackman's book is our guide, our roadmap for this.
I like that. A roadmap.
It's a chronological journey starting in the 1900s, going all the way to the 2000s.
A whole century.
The whole thing. We're talking about the evolution of tailoring, like how the silhouette changed, fabrics, like what was in and what was out.
Interesting.
And even the purpose of clothes.
How what we wear reflects what we do.
Right, exactly. And how that changed.
Fascinating.
Blackman breaks down how all these things, like art movements, music scenes.
Of course those had to play a role.
Youth culture, even world events.
Like wars and stuff.
All of that, how it impacted what men wore.
Makes sense.
It's this really cool story of how menswear went from being all about practicality, just function, to being this big, huge form of self-expression.
So we're going from like stiff collars and suits to like everything we see today.
Well, the crazy stuff, yeah.
So I guess the big question is, how did we get from point A to point B?
That's what we're here to find out, right?
Right. That's the whole point of this deep dive.
This is your shortcut to understanding how it all happened.
Like a crash course in a century of men's style.
Exactly. We'll hit the highlights, dig into the why.
And by the end of it,
you'll be able to look at a guy's outfit and be like,
I see what's going on there.
Yeah, exactly. You'll get it. The context, the history.
The whole picture.
So let's go back to the beginning.
Back to the beginning.
Early 1900s, what was going on then?
Oh, we're talking Edwardian era, right? Suits everywhere.
Suits galore.
Blackman really goes into this. The early 1900s, it was all about propriety.
Keeping it proper.
Very polished look.
That Edwardian gentleman.
3-piece suit, not just for special occasions.
No way.
Daily wear for pretty much everyone.
Everyone who was anyone, right?
Pretty much bankers in London, office workers in New York.
All suited up.
It was the standard.
I can't even imagine.
Picture this.
Okay.
Dark wool suit, matching vest, matching trousers.
The whole 9 yards.
Plus, high-collared shirt, starched stiff.
Ouch.
And a tie.
Essential of the modern man.
It's so interesting, right? It wasn't just about looks, though. There was a functional aspect, too.
Okay.
Blackman actually quotes someone describing the suit as, like, a machine for living in.
A machine for living in?
Yeah, kind of like this constant, dignified, like, armor for everyday life.
That makes sense, I guess.
But even then, things were starting to change, even within that strict suit-focused world, especially during leisure time.
Okay.
Particularly in Britain, you start to see, like, more relaxed, sporty styles popping up.
So, like, not suits?
Not always, no.
Interesting.
This is where we start to see that move away from complete formality.
I see.
Savile Row, the place for tailoring?
Oh, yeah. The best of the best.
They started offering tweed garments, more casual, meant for, like, country activities.
Okay.
We're talking Norfolk jackets.
Those are the ones with a belt, right?
That's right. Belted waist. Perfect for shooting.
Makes sense.
And then you have those knickerbockers or +4s.
+4s, those are those short pants, right?
Yeah, but not like shorts. They go down, like, 4 inches below the knee.
Gotcha.
For golf, hunting, that kind of thing.
So more active, outdoorsy pursuits.
Exactly.
And I feel like we have to talk about the Prince of Wales here.
Oh, absolutely. Later became the Duke of Windsor. Huge style influence.
He was always so well dressed.
He was. And he kind of pushed back against the super strict Victorian stuff. He was all about comfort. He even had this phrase, dress soft.
Dress soft. I like that.
And he really loved those +4s, helped make them popular.
Makes you want to get a pair yourself.
Right.
Over in America, though, was all suits all the time.
Suits were still king, but you started to see some early leisure wear creeping in.
What did that look like?
Think light linen suits for summer.
Okay. Keep it cool.
Or striped blazers with straw hats, boater hats.
I get a garden party or something.
Yeah, or a cricket match, maybe a trip to the beach.
Fancy.
But overall, the silhouette still pretty structured, pre-war.
What do you mean by that?
Jackets were long, buttoned high, created that kind of boxy look up top. And the trousers, straight cut, sharp crease.
I think I had that crease.
And hats. Hats were essential.
Really?
For all classes. Top hats for the fanciest occasions.
Of course.
Bowler hats for, like, city workers.
Okay.
And the flat cap, more practical for laborers.
So even with everyone in suits, you could still tell who was who.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Like, an affluent gentleman would have a Savile Row suit.
Custom-made, super expensive.
Exactly. Showed off their status.
But working-class guys, they'd have ready-made suits. More practical, durable.
Heat or surge, usually.
And strong boots, right?
Yeah, absolutely. For everyday wear and tear.
Makes sense. And what about those who worked with their hands, like laborers, farmers?
For them, practicality was everything.
Yeah, no time for fancy stuff.
Overalls, canvas chore coats, heavy denim trousers.
Like the early jeans, almost.
Yeah, exactly. That's where those come from.
So interesting how it all connects.
It is, right. And there's another interesting thing here.
What's that?
Even this early, you see the beginnings of, like, workwear and military influences coming in.
Oh, yeah.
Things like the Boer War around the turn of the century.
Right.
That really put khaki military tunics and belted jackets on the map.
Kind of like a preview of how much the military would impact fashion later on.
Exactly. It all starts here.
Then boom, World War I hits.
1914, the world changes.
Big time.
And fashion changes with it.
Yeah. Wartime, everything's different.
Millions of men, suddenly they're in uniform.
Trading their suits for khaki.
Exactly. Utility became everything.
Function over form.
From the British khaki drill and those puttees, you know, those leg wraps,
Yeah, I've seen pictures.
to the American olive drab uniform.
It was all about being practical, being ready for anything.
Absolutely. And that need for practicality, it actually led to some big innovations.
What do you mean?
Things that would become, like, fashion staples later on.
Like what?
The trench coat.
Oh, classic.
Designed by Burberry, initially for British officers.
To keep them dry in the trenches, right?
Yes, exactly. Durable, waterproof.
And then it just became this, like, stylish coat everyone wears.
Exactly. From the battlefield to the streets. And the bomber jacket, another one, born out of necessity for pilots in open cockpits.
Had to stay warm up there?
Absolutely. And then it became this iconic jacket.
It's crazy how these practical things become fashion items.
It's fascinating, right?
Totally. And then there's a whole rationing thing during the war.
Oh, yeah. Resources were scarce, fabric especially.
So that impacted clothing, too.
Big time. Everything was streamlined, simplified.
To save fabric.
And anything flashy or excessive kind of frowned upon.
Not the time for peacocking.
Exactly. It was seen as unpatriotic.
So by the end of World War I, what was the state of menswear?
Things had shifted, for sure.
Yeah.
Those guys who came back from war, they were used to the practicality of their uniform.
They've been living in them for years.
And society, it was changing too, becoming more egalitarian.
More equal.
All of that together, it set the stage for a move away from the super strict formality.
Like goodbye stiff collars.
More or less, yeah.
Interesting. So the war really was a turning point.
It was. It paved the way for more relaxed individual style.
Which brings us to the roaring 20s.
The 20s.
In the 30s.
The time of contrasts, really.
We go from the, like, crazy parties and jazz.
The exuberance of the jazz age.
To the hardship of the Depression.
Yeah, a real swinging mood.
But you see it all reflected in the clothes.
Oh, absolutely. Menswear is like a mirror to society.
So true. So the 20s, post-war, people are ready for fun.
That post-war generation, they wanted to break free from those old conventions.
And their clothes showed it.
Big time. Suits were still in, but the style was different.
How so?
Slimmer cuts, higher waists, narrower trousers.
More modern.
And they weren't afraid to accessorize.
To add a little something extra.
Exactly. It was all about expressing yourself a bit more.
Makes sense. And the younger generation, they were pushing things even further, right?
Oh, yeah, especially the college kids. They were really testing boundaries.
What were they wearing?
Okay, picture this. Oxford bags.
Oxford bags.
Yeah, these trousers with ridiculously wide legs.
Like how wide?
Sometimes over 20 inches at the cuff.
Wow, that's like wider than my whole leg.
It was a statement, for sure.
A statement of like rebellion.
Yeah, youth culture finding its voice.
And they loved those raccoon fur coats, right?
Oh, yeah, big and loud.
And those collegiate sweaters, like at football games.
Exactly. It was all about projecting this, like, carefree, youthful energy.
Makes sense. And the Prince of Wales, he was still a style icon.
Edward VIII by then, but yes, absolutely. A major influence.
He had a knack for it, didn't he?
He really did. He embodied that, like, smart, casual look that defined the 20s.
What were some of his signature looks?
Okay, think Savile Row suits, still, but in interesting fabrics.
Like what?
Glencheck tweeds, Fair Isle vests.
Adding a bit of visual interest.
Exactly, and he loved soft collared shirts.
No more stiff collar.
Oh, much more comfortable.
I bet his dad wasn't thrilled.
Maybe not, but Edward, he was a trendsetter.
And those spectator shoes, very stylish.
And the Windsor knot for his ties.
It's all coming back to me.
And he was great at mixing patterns, which was pretty daring back then.
Bold move.
He had this natural flair, he could pull it off.
And people followed his lead.
Oh, yeah. Whatever he wore, it became popular.
Like those tartan golf caps?
Uh-huh. And those +4s, perfect for the golf course.
He made those things look good.
He really did. And he also championed this new suit style, the drape cut.
Drape cut, what's that?
A fuller cut through the chest and shoulders, more fabric overall.
So a bit more relaxed.
Much more comfortable, easier to move in.
I can see why that caught on.
It was a big departure from those stiff Edwardian suits.
And it wasn't just the aristocracy driving trends, right?
No, this was the jazz age, so music and performers were huge influences.
That's right, the big band era.
Those band leaders, Duke Ellington, Cab Calloway, they looked so sharp.
Tuxedos, tailcoats.
Impeccably dressed.
And in Harlem, the jazz scene there, they had their own style.
Those flashy, colorful suits, it's like a precursor to the zoot suit.
Interesting, so many threads coming together.
It's a dynamic period, for sure.
And what's cool is that men's leisure wear really expanded in the 20s.
It did. It became much more acceptable to dress down.
In more situations.
Exactly. Like before, you'd be in a suit for pretty much everything.
But now, you could relax a bit.
Sports and travel really influenced this.
Nah.
Well, think about it. Tennis was huge. Those crisp white outfits.
Yeah, very stylish.
And for traveling, those light-colored flannel trousers, knit pullovers.
Comfortable and still put together.
And then there's René Lacoste, 1927.
What did he do?
He created the polo shirt.
Oh, wow. So that's where that comes from.
That short-sleeved knit shirt with the soft collar.
A classic.
It revolutionized casual wear.
And it's still going strong today.
Absolutely. And even at beach resorts, things were loosening up.
No more suits on the beach.
No, guys were wearing just slacks, maybe a sleeveless sweater or a patterned shirt.
Keep it breezy.
And in the more, artistic bohemian circles, they were experimenting even more.
Oh, yeah. What were they doing?
Like in Paris, you'd see writers and artists wearing loose ties or even workmen's smocks.
Like a deliberate statement?
Yeah, almost like a rejection of that stuffy bourgeois fashion.
Pushing boundaries.
That's what the 20s were all about.
So by the end of the Roaring 20s, that strict uniformity was starting to fade.
Suits were still important, but lighter, more colorful.
And no more vests.
Sometimes, yeah, they were becoming optional.
And after work, men could express themselves more.
That's right. It was a new era for menswear.
And then the 30s hit, and the mood changed.
The Great Depression, a time of hardship.
Yeah, not exactly a time for extravagance.
But interestingly, this is when classic menswear really gets refined.
Really?
People had less money, so they focused on quality, on timeless pieces.
Makes sense. Make it last.
And the suit, it was still the cornerstone, but the silhouette evolved.
How so?
Broader shoulders, more defined, a more sculpted look.
Projecting strength, maybe?
Yeah, like an image of masculine confidence, even during tough times.
In Hollywood, it started to have a big impact on style, right?
Huge. Those movie stars, they were style icons.
Like who?
Clark Gable, Gary Cooper, Fred Astaire.
Oh, yeah, those guys were always impeccably dressed.
They were, and they made those double-breasted suits look so good.
And the tuxedos.
So,
And they could even make tweed sport jackets look sophisticated.
paired with those soft knit ties, it was a whole look.
I guess movies were like a style guide for guys back then.
Absolutely. They showed you how to look good.
And the message was, you don't need a ton of clothes.
Nope, just a few well-cut suits, attention to detail.
That's interesting because even with the Depression, menswear kept evolving.
It did. Some high-fashion ideas started trickling down to the masses.
Becoming more accessible?
And practical innovations, too.
Like what?
The zipper fly for trousers, it finally took over.
Goodbye, button fly.
Much more convenient.
Small change, big impact.
And the Duke of Windsor, he was still influencing things.
That guy, always ahead of the curve.
He continued to champion tweed suits for informal occasions.
And the +4s, he never gave up on those. He really loved those +4s.
He did, and he also popularized brown suede shoes.
Instead of the traditional black leather.
Yeah, a bit of a fashion rebellion.
I caught on.
It did, expanded men's shoe options.
What else was going on in the 30s?
Blackman talks about this interesting good guy, bad guy style thing.
Okay, what's that all about?
Well, you had the gangsters, real-life figures, and those in movies.
Like Al Capone?
Exactly. Pinstripe double-breasted suits, fedoras.
That became the, bad guy look.
Yeah, this darkly glamorous, villainous style.
Interesting. So the clothes could tell a story.
They could. And then you had the more law-abiding citizens.
Sticking to more conservative styles.
Single-breasted suits, less flashy accessories.
The good guys.
And even in movies, they'd use this, light suit, dark suit thing.
Signal who was who.
Exactly, reinforcing those visual associations.
That's so cool how clothing could convey so much.
It really could.
And by the late 30s, war clouds are gathering again.
Another world war looming.
And you see that reflected in fashion, too.
Some subtle militaristic touches start appearing.
Okay, like what?
Trench coats come back into style.
Making sense, practical and stylish.
And those belted safari jackets.
For the adventurous gentleman.
And colors like olive green, navy blue, they became popular.
So even though war was coming, menswear was becoming more diverse.
It was. Men had more options, more ways to express themselves.
More than at the start of the century, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah. They had choices in color, pattern, casual styles.
It was a new world for menswear.
And then World War II hit, and everything changed again.
War has such a huge impact on everything.
It really does, and fashion is no exception.
In the 40s, it was all about utility and uniformity, right?
Exactly. Those were the priorities.
Civilian clothes, they kind of took a backseat.
To the military uniforms, of course.
Millions of men and women in uniform.
It was a global effort.
And for the first half of the decade, function was everything.
Absolutely no time for frills.
Governments even got involved, right?
Yeah. They started rationing fabric, limiting clothing production.
To save resources for the war.
Britain introduced that utility suit.
Very basic, no extra details.
Just the bare essentials.
And in America, they had the War Production Board.
They issued guidelines, got rid of any unnecessary features on clothes.
So everything was streamlined.
To conserve fabric, to be efficient.
And the silhouette changed too, right?
Yeah, it got more simplified, squared off.
Like a military uniform.
Exactly. Padded shoulders, straight lines.
A very utilitarian look.
But even with all this austerity, there was this interesting countercurrent.
Oh yeah, what was that?
The zoot suit.
The zoot suit. Now that was a statement.
It was especially popular with African-American, Latino, and working-class youth.
A real rebellion against the wartime restrictions.
Exactly. It was all about excess flamboyance.
Describe the zoot suit for those who haven't seen one.
Okay, imagine a long, loose jacket, wide lapels, high, wide shoulders.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Paired with these baggy trousers, ballooning out but then tapering at the ankle.
So dramatic.
And often topped off with a wide-brimmed hat and a flashy tie.
It was a look, that's for sure.
It was a rejection of everything the war effort stood for.
So people weren't exactly thrilled about it.
Some saw it as unpatriotic, wasteful.
Yeah, you could see why.
And it actually led to some conflict.
Really?
Yeah, in 1943, you had the Zoot Suit riots in Los Angeles.
I've heard of those, but I don't really know what happened.
Basically, you had off-duty servicemen clashing with Mexican-American youth.
The Pachucos, right.
Yeah, they were associated with the Zoot Suit.
So it was more than just fashion, it was social and political.
Exactly. It was about identity, about pushing back against authority.
And Blackman points out that they were taking workwear, military elements, and exaggerating them. Like a statement.
A visual protest.
Really powerful stuff.
And then, after the war, you see this interesting thing happen.
What's that?
Military attire starts blending into mainstream fashion.
Makes sense. Those uniforms, they represented heroism, sacrifice.
Exactly. People associated them with positive things.
So they started wearing pieces of their uniforms in everyday life.
Yeah, and certain items really stuck around.
Like what?
The trench coat, it never really went out of style.
Still a classic.
And the bomber jacket, it became this symbol of adventure.
And the pea coat from the Navy.
Warm and practical.
And those khaki chino pants.
A military staple that became a civilian favorite.
It's amazing how those wartime necessities became fashion staples.
It is, and this wasn't just a Western phenomenon.
Oh, yeah.
In China, you had the Mao suit.
I've seen pictures. Very utilitarian.
Yeah, a simple jacket and trousers, usually gray or blue.
Inspired by military styles.
A complete departure from traditional Chinese clothing.
So it wasn't just the West. Global events were shaping menswear everywhere.
It was a worldwide phenomenon.
And by the late 40s, the war's over. Things are starting to recover.
And menswear goes through a bit of a revival.
People are ready for something new.
Rationing eases up. There's this desire for more individual style.
With more flair.
In 1945, Brioni, the Italian fashion house, they hold one of the first men's fashion shows.
Really?
They showed these suits in bold colors, a hint of what was to come.
A taste of luxury after years of austerity.
And for the average guy, there was this desire to return to normalcy.
Back to suits.
But the suits were different. They had broader shoulders, a looser fit.
Still echoing that military influence.
And in America, it was called the bold look.
Projecting confidence, prosperity.
Exactly. And fedora hats and wide ties became popular.
A little bit of extravagance after years of holding back.
And this is where we see the teenager really emerge as a force in fashion.
Teenagers, interesting.
Before this, the concept of a teenager as like a separate consumer group, it didn't really exist.
That's wild. It's so ingrained now.
But in the 40s, these young guys, influenced by music, by movies.
They wanted their own style.
And they gravitated towards more casual clothes, jeans, t-shirts, Letterman jackets.
The foundations of teenage rebellion.
Exactly. They were pushing back against the older generation.
And that's the end of the 40s. What a decade.
It was. War, recovery, the beginnings of youth culture.
So much happened.
Setting the stage for the 50s, which were full of contrasts.
Yeah, on the surface, it seems like a time of conformity.
In many ways it was, especially for adult men.
The man in the gray flannel suit era.
Exactly. Stable jobs, respectable attire.
Suits were back in a big way.
In the early 50s, they were mostly dark, conservative, conventional cuts.
Back to basics.
In America, the Madison Avenue look was huge.
Or the Ivy League look, right?
Yeah, same idea. Single-breasted suits, charcoal or navy flannel.
Always with the white button-down shirt.
Then a subdued tie, maybe a pocket square.
Very understated.
It was all about effortless good taste, originating on college campuses.
And brands like Brooks Brothers, J. Press, they were all over this.
They provided the uniform for this preppy style.
So it wasn't just about high fashion, it was filtering down to the mainstream.
Exactly. And casual clothing was also becoming more important.
People had more leisure time.
Suburbs were growing. People had backyards. They needed clothes for that.
So what were they wearing?
Think khaki trousers, chino pants. Lots of them were actually military surplus.
Practical and affordable.
Paired with short-sleeved sports shirts, polo shirts.
Then the Hawaiian shirt, right?
Oh, yeah. That was a big one. Brought a bit of tropical flair to things.
So even though it was the 50s, things were loosening up a bit.
They were. In Europe, too, particularly Italy.
What was going on there?
Younger men were into this more relaxed, continental look.
Okay, what's that?
Think stylish knitwear, open-neck shirts.
More casual, but still chic.
Exactly, and even the suit got a casual makeover.
How so?
You could swap it out for a sports jacket and contrasting slacks.
Still dressy, but more comfortable.
And while all this was happening with the older generation, the teenagers, they were brewing a rebellion.
The youth quake.
The 50s saw the teenager become this distinct force in fashion.
They had their own ideas.
And rock and roll, it played a huge role.
Of course, Elvis, Chuck Berry, Little Richard.
You were changing everything.
Elvis especially. His style was so influential.
Those bright peg trousers, the loud jackets, the open shirts.
Look at that hair.
The pompadour. It was a whole look.
And it really shocked the older generation.
Oh, yeah, they weren't ready for Elvis.
But the teenagers, they loved it.
It was rebellion. It was excitement.
And it changed what was considered cool.
Suddenly, it was okay to stand out, to be a bit flashy.
And jeans became everyday wear.
Denim. It was the fabric of rebellion.
And plain white t-shirts.
Worn as outerwear, not just underwear anymore.
Influenced by guys like Marlon Brando, James Dean.
Those brooding, rebellious film icons.
And a black leather jacket.
Or the denim jacket.
The uniform of the teenage rebel.
So different from their father's generation.
And in Britain, you had the Teddy Boys.
Another youth quake happening.
They were interesting, kind of a throwback, but with a modern twist.
They took those Edwardian-inspired drape suits.
But they made them their own.
Velvet collars, slim ties, those high-waisted drainpipe trousers.
And the shoes, those creeper shoes.
Big soles, very distinctive.
And the hair, those pompadours.
Sculptured, elaborate.
They were a sight to behold.
One of the first real post-war subcultural fashion movements.
It wasn't just about the clothes. It was about belonging.
About expressing your identity.
And it shows how youth cultures can reinterpret old styles.
To create something new and exciting.
So by the end of the 50s, the lines were drawn.
Old versus young.
Traditional versus rebellious.
And then the 60s hit and everything exploded.
The swinging 60s, they really lived up to the name.
A decade of transformation, everything changed.
Menswear went through a complete revolution.
Driven by youth culture.